I'm Tiffany.
And I'm Stephanie.
And we're Sisters of the South. Coming to you with another episode today. Yay!
Yay, we're here.
All right. So before we get started, we just want to remind everyone that if you're enjoying our channel, please hit that like button at the bottom of the screen and subscribe for true crime content every week, which is absolutely free, and we love free anything.
Free. Yes.
So also, please share it with your friends. Get those names and faces out there. Our names and faces out there.
Yeah, I mean, that's great too. Sure. And share our content. We want to get as much information out to the public as we can on some of these cases, and that's the most important thing.
Yes, that's what we're here for. And we also want to give a little shout out to SoFly.
Woo! We love our SoFly.
This is how legends.
All right. Thank you, SoFly, for
you.
your beautiful embroidery and merchandise that you've provided for us. And so now we can get started with the story. And I don't know much about this story. Stephanie's kind of just bringing it to me. So we'll see how this goes and what I think about it.
Yeah, so let's get started, guys. We are going to go way back to 1910. We're going to take a little trip in that time machine back to the year of 1910. This is one of the oldest unsolved murder cases in the state of Mississippi. And from what I've gathered, a very devastating incident that happened in this town. And then they still talk about it to this day. It's a black and white scene in my mind's eye, but I'm going to take out some colors and get to coloring that scene for you. Winston County is a county located in northeast part of the state of Mississippi. The census in 1910 shows the population to be 17,139 people. As of the 2020 census, the population is 17,714. Seems like not much has changed in the past 114 years. Its county seat is Louisville. The county is named for Lewis Winston, who is a colonel in the militia, a prominent lawyer, and a judge of the Mississippi Supreme Court. Winston was founded in 1833 as a part of the Treaty of the Dancing Rabbit Creek, which forced Choctaw tribes to leave Mississippi for Oklahoma. The county is in the site of the Noni Waya, an ancient mount built in the Woodland period, about 1 CE 300 CE. Since the 17th century, it has been venerated by the Choctaw people who later occupied the area. As of 2008, the mound is owned by the Mississippi Band of Choctaw Indians, a federally recognized tribe. We're going to talk about a resident of Winston County. Her name was Janie Sharp. Janie was born on April 14, 1892, to Martha and William Clifton Sharp. She was the fourth child of 8 children. In the summer of 1910, Janie was 18 years old and was engaged to Earl Ray. What happened to Janie was one of the most sensational cases ever to occur there. Time has obliterated much of the story, and the time has added many more details. She had walked to the post office at a rural hill near her home, and upon returning was attacked by her assailant while passing through a small part of the woods. The rural hill community in the western part of Winston County, Mississippi, was a typical small community with a post office, 2 general stores, a 2-room schoolhouse, and the Methodist church. These were essential for the small farmers who raised cotton for sale, corn and hay for livestock, of course, and vegetables. There were a few families who used hired hands to work their land. The Sharp family was long established and were farmers. July 21st, 1910 was a Thursday. Janie had helped her mother clean away the noon dishes and straighten up the house. She took her parasol and a handkerchief. She walked 1.5 miles to pick up mail and buy some dress goods at the general store. There were some rumors that instead of going home immediately, she meant to go to the home of Earl Ray to do some dressmaking. She left the general store about 3 p.m. and was seen by several people. According to them, she had her parasol, 2 small packages, and a copy of the Commercial Appeal, which I think is a newspaper. I looked it up, and the best I could gather from the information was that was the town newspaper at the time. She also had 2 letters and a handkerchief. Her mother became worried and walked to Rural Hill looking for Janie when she hadn't returned by late afternoon. Before dark, men from all over the area had formed search parties looking for Janie. Will Sharp tried to find out if a marriage license had been issued, possibly elopement, which was odd because Earl Ray was in the search party. The check may have been made prior to Mr. Sharp's knowledge of Earl's presence, or he may have thought that she had interest in someone else. Large areas were searched until the early morning hours. The search party got tired, and plans were being made to defer the search until morning. Lee Sharp, Janie's brother, continued to search along Commodore Road as they made their way to the Sharp home. On the west side of the road, he followed a ravine that led to a branch of water. There he found the body of Janie. Apparently, Lee Sharp fainted, and it was several minutes before he came to and began shouting. This was somewhere around 2 a.m. Her throat had been slashed, and she had been struck in the head forcefully. There were signs of assault. Found nearby was her parasol, packages from the store, newspaper, and letters. No handkerchief was found. Judge McNeely asked Dr. Clemens to examine Janie's body. He is the one who described the position of the body and nature of the wounds. Her father, Will, retrieved Janie's body and took her home, about a quarter of a mile away. Later that morning, Sheriff Hull and several citizens left Louisville for the scene. Lee Sharp, the brother, returned to the scene later that morning and noticed tracks leading from the road. He thought they indicated a sign of a struggle, then more tracks leading to what looked to be another area of scuffling. The Winston County Journal indicated that it seemed as though Janie was taken from the road, assaulted. She tried to escape and run a short way. She struggled once more and again escaped to run some more before finally being overtaken and killed. Speculation suggested that she was struck on the head, and in an attempt to guarantee death, her throat was slit, and she was stabbed several times under the chin. The information is murky as to whether this muddy branch of water is where she was found, or if she was killed and had been moved in an attempt to hide her body. I did a little research on this case as much as I can because there's a lot of lost information. And just as a note, as we continue on in this story, I was curious while they were doing their investigation, did they have an opportunity, or was even fingerprinting part of investigating back then? I didn't know when fingerprints came into play in forensics. So fingerprinting was introduced into forensics in 1892. The first criminal case tried in America with fingerprints was in Chicago on December 21st, 1910 against Thomas Jennings. So that kind of answered my question once I went back and did my research. As far as how they were going to handle this investigation.
Now, were all locations available to do fingerprinting at that time?
I'm sure
though?
not, because
Yeah, because we're talking about a small county.
Right. It all comes into, at the end of the day, how much money they have to be able to do it. But today we take fingerprinting for granted and just think it should be done with all cases. In most cases it is. It's just a given that it's done. But back in 1910, it was just barely getting introduced. As a matter of fact, the murder that took place where Thomas Jennings was tried, that was the first time. That was in 1911. So they were just bringing that to the forefront. So that unfortunately wasn't something that they would be doing in this case. But there seemed to be no evidence of strangers around, and suspicion quickly turned inward, specifically towards Winston Pyramenter. Swinton was the same age as Janie and the youngest son of Edward Pyramenter, a local farmer. Swinton's behavior was strange during the search, and what happened after she was found made him the prime suspect. He had been swimming with friends at a local spot not far from the post office, and along the road that Janie would have been taken. Therefore, he was in the vicinity near the time of the attack. During the search, he directed others away from checking in a particular area, claiming he had already searched there. This was the general location where Janie's body was found. Others thought Swinton seemed disinterested at times and acted strangely overall. When he heard the bloodhounds were being brought in, he said that he was sure they would track him because he had been in the woods hunting for Janie.
Yeah, but so is everyone else.
I'm right. So there's so much scent going on. Why would they just be
Single
looking for
him out.
Single him out. So he's acting really weird.
Yeah, he
People
sounds
like,
very suspicious.
This guy's suspicious here. What's going on? So shortly after he went home with at least one other person with the intention of changing clothes. So he goes home after swimming, of course. And one of the first things he does is gets out of his clothing. And Swinton was seen washing on their front porch because, of course, back then, most of them didn't have running water. They definitely didn't have AC, and most of them probably didn't even have electricity back then. So he's out on the front porch. He's taking care of business and then entering a side room where he changed his clothes and possibly his shoes. JT Hanna arrived with, and he's actually part of the police force, arrived with a bloodhound named Ruth Hindu. She tracked through several places and a pair of tracks were found. A man and a woman's footprints were found. Ruth Hindu did indeed track to the perimeter home as a crowd watched. She trailed around the property and even reared up on the front gate.
Hold on. I need to go back to this little guy.
Mm-hmm. Let's do it.
Washing his clothes outside. I mean, obviously outside, but how many 18-year-old young men wash their own clothes?
Especially back then.
In 1910.
Yeah.
I'm going to say their mamas did it for
Yeah,
them.
and I'm sure he was having to do it in a bucket of water.
Of course.
Yeah. So he's scrubbing his clothes. And he just went swimming.
See, that
so
sounds
what are you
suspicious
gonna
to me
them?
too, right?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe he's innocent. That just sounds suspicious.
That sounds guilty to me.
Yes.
I agree with you.
Oh no, Mama, I'll get my own clothes today.
Yeah.
I mean,
and I'm sure if you'd asked his mother, she'd be like, I don't know what he's doing because I'm usually the one doing all
he
the
doesn't
clothing.
know how to wash his clothes.
Right. So yeah, he's very suspicious.
In a lot of ways.
In a lot of ways. So Miss Hindu, the dog, she ascended on a group of men that included Swinton. From what Hannah said, Ruth Hindu looked at Swinton, threw back her head, and scented him specifically. Based upon the dog's actions and Swinton's behavior, a search was made for his clothes. In the side room were found the clothes that he had worn earlier, and in the pocket was a Barlow knife, a plug of tobacco, and 2 handkerchiefs, a man's and a woman's handkerchief. So a his and hers set of handkerchiefs. And if you remember, Janie had a handkerchief when she left, but when they found her body, they didn't find the handkerchief. So yeah, interesting. I mean, I walk around with a paper towel. Okay. So
Me too.
So I understand the handkerchief thing, okay?
And maybe that was a thing back then. Maybe
yes, they walked
his
around
mama's
with
handkerchief ended up in his pocket that day
be.
since he's been doing the laundry.
I mean, yeah. I mean, anything
but did he
can
have
happen.
a lady friend?
Did he have a lady friend? Well, he wanted her to be his lady friend,
Well,
apparently.
I'm just asking if there was another one. I mean,
Well, maybe he'd given it to her as
I'm
a
sure
gift
there are a lot
and-
of handkerchiefs.
Yeah, maybe
going
he
around
decided he got mad about something. He decided he would take her handkerchief. I mean, who knows? Yeah, this dude's a little weird. So a mob had formed by the time the sheriff and a local judge got there, and things weren't looking pretty. Sheriff Hull called Louisville for additional help because they were afraid people might try to extract their own vengeance. They headed to Louisville with Swinton Perimeter, Alonzo Birchfield, and Walter Cummings. Cummins, who had been swimming with Swinton that day. A mob of about 75 people followed them. And I would be scared. At this point, I'd be like, freaking A, what's going on? These people are going to kill me.
Well, yeah.
A mob of 75 people?
I'm uncomfortable in the grocery store with 75 people. If they were following me,
I'd really be scared. Yeah, and so he had already called it, right? Like, oh, them dogs are going to call me out. See, he was already setting the people up.
well, yeah, he kind of did it to himself.
Yeah, so now they're like, okay, weirdo, we got you.
We're going to take care of this ourselves.
Right? So,
Right
so during the day, people had gathered in town and threats were being made. There were fears of a lynching. At 11 p.m., a special train came and took the prisoners to Winona for safekeeping. The next week, Alonzo Birchfield and Walter Cummings were let go due to a lack of evidence and sent back to Louisville. Swinton was to be held for Janie's murder in October of that year. After reading trial transcripts and denoting the behavior of some of the community, it seems that at least some people extracted Swinton to be involved. Per trial testimony, Dr. Clemens didn't find the Methodist minister, thinking Janie had eloped, and then went to Perimeter's home looking for Swinton, thinking that he might know something about Janie's whereabouts. And so what I gather, and what little bit I could put together, Janie was engaged to another gentleman, but Swinton and her, he had been sweet on her. And I think she might have entertained him a little bit, but ultimately he wasn't her type. She just kind of wrote him off, and then starts dating someone else and gets engaged, and it sounds like he might have become a little bitter or obsessed about that situation, and a lot of people in the town knew about that. So I think they already had their eye on him to begin with.
Okay, but he was out swimming.
Yeah. With a group of boys.
With a group
yeah.
of guys. Okay.
Mhm.
Did he take time off to, I need to tuck behind this tree over here?
Yeah, I don't think the questioning went that
exactly.
far.
They just, you seem suspicious. You had a thing for, you must be guilty. I mean, there's got to be something that they...
There's some gaps missing.
Well, I mean, it was 1910, so our
did they keep records? They didn't have recordings back then, and everybody knew everybody, and everybody's related to everybody. We're kind of going back to that mentality, and so just people back then, especially, the type of investigations that were done were little to none.
You just have to wonder, though.
Yeah. Yeah, people's judgment was more important than the actual facts a lot of the time. So it's not funny, but it's true. So several others did the same, including the one who went at the request of Will Sharp. This leads one to think that some people knew of or suspected some kind of relationship between Janie and Swinton or her family, or that something in Swinton's past made people suspect him. And again, goes back to maybe they canoodled a little bit. Maybe he walked her home from church one day, sat next to her in church, opened the door for her. The simple things back in the day that they did.
Pulled her hair at church.
Yeah. Hey, he probably carried her books to class, or who knows, probably something so simple. And I'm sure there was some talk in the town that he had a crush on her. So a lot of people were already suspecting this dude's guilty. Absolutely.
Well, and he didn't help himself.
And he's a weirdo. Okay. He's just weirdo. So, and he owned it. He kind of did that to himself.
He put himself out there.
Later testimony about Swinton's comments about wanting Janie's affection, anger towards her father, and accusations against Swinton regarding a previous assault of a 7-year-old girl may have fueled these rumors. So again, he had been running his mouth that he was sweet on her, okay, and he hated her dad. Couldn't figure out why he hated her dad. I tried to find information. Of course, there's none.
Maybe her dad didn't like him.
Maybe her dad's like, this dude's lazy. He ain't gonna be, picking cotton and weeding my fields and doing all that. He's lazy.
Weird, so
he's lazy. He's weird. He's not gonna be doing anything for my daughter. So I don't want nothing to do with him. Who knows? But let's go back to the 7-year-old girl. If he's assaulting a 7-year-old girl, and the grown men in this town, especially in 1910, found out about it, this dude, I'm surprised he survived long enough to even cause any kind of crime. I'm surprised he didn't hang him up by his toes.
Probably wouldn't have if it were my 7-year-old.
Exactly. So that's weird in itself. So again, we go back to, at this point, if he's not guilty, he kind of set himself up.
Well, he just seems like the troubled.
He's a troublemaker
guy in the town, right? I mean,
yes.
No one. They're not suspecting anyone else.
No. And again, they all know each other very well. In those small towns, especially back then, they'd have little parties and town dances and things like that. So everybody knew everybody, and they were related.
Probably his cousins.
Yeah, they were probably all related. So a lot of people knew stuff. So we're going to stop right here for just one moment. And we wanted to share that some exciting news that we actually have opened up an Etsy store, and it is called SOS Studio Shop for our merchandise. So right now we've started out small. We've put out some caps, and later on we'll add to our inventory, but we're starting small. But if you would like to help us out and help promote our show, that would be great. So we will put our information in, but here it is.
All right, guys. It is. It's pool season, and I like to have my cap on in the pool. So if you want a cap to promote us,
yes.
And it just looks good.
It looks great.
Check us out and maybe place an order. And
hey, it always helps to have a cap on a rainy day.
You always need a cap.
Bad hair day,
pool day, sunny day, every day.
Yeah, lake day.
Keep one in your car, one in your purse.
Absolutely.
One everywhere.
Hey, and they're cute as hell.
That's right.
So go get you one of those.
All right, guys. Thanks. Back to the story.
So we're going to continue. So charges were brought against Swinton for Janie's murder. Significant amounts of circumstantial evidence included a handkerchief believed to be Janie's in his possession, an approximately match of a shoe size to some of the tracks near the scene. His proximity to the area at the time of the crime, Ruth Hindu tracking to his family's home, and last but not least, his strange and seemingly misleading behavior during the search for Janie. Some rumors claim that Swinton made comments about his desire for Janie's affections and that he had made vague threats against Janie's father, Will. If the circumstantial evidence was correct, it was significant. In those days, the wheels of justice moved very quickly, and the trial was set in Louisville in early October 1910. So, yeah, there wasn't a whole lot of sit on it and wait. Let's try to get more evidence.
Let's not talk to anyone. Let's
There was none of the, DNA testing and fingerprinting, of course, and talking to everyone around trying to get stories. And they didn't have time for that. We're moving on with this. He's guilty by association, guilty by words, guilty by his actions, just guilty. Okay, so they've already.
Well, it sounds like to me he's got some other things under his belt that he needed.
Yeah, he's already got problems. So let's just put this guy away. We're done with him. So the case was heard by Judge McLean. The prosecutors were Lamb, Gully, and Jones. The defense was Rogers, Brantley, and Hopkins. The Winston County Journal made an ad regarding Swinton's calm and composed behavior throughout the trial and thought it worked against him in the minds of the jury. 10 days into testimony, it went to the jury. They returned in a few minutes with a guilty verdict and almost agreed that they had reached agreement on the first ballot. Before passing the sentence, Judge McLean asked Swinton if he had anything to say. His only answer, I am not guilty. Swinton was sentenced to hang on November the 12th, 1910. And man, we're talking about these people move fast. They're like, this happens in August. By November, let's just get him out of here so we can start next year new and fresh.
Well, I do have to, what was his defense saying?
Well, that basically, and I read on it, and I don't have it in the story, but basically cut and dried, it was all circumstantial evidence. There was no proof against him. Again, we don't have no fingerprinting, no.
And I'm going to say this. Okay, he was washing his clothes.
Yes.
But it's not like there was stain remover.
No.
Back then.
He might not have had no soap. Maybe some lard. Soap. Maybe some lye soap. But who knows?
Does that take a lot of? I'm guessing if you slit someone's throat, that's a lot of blood.
That's a lot of blood. Yeah. Well, they did find, and again, the only forensics in this whole investigation that was, from what I've read, is footprints. And so the footprints they found. So
we're not going to look for blood anywhere.
No, the footprints they found from his shoe on the ground.
Okay, but we're talking about 1910. So I'm guessing a lot of people wore the same
shoes
and same shoe size.
Right, they were around the same size shoe.
So the guy was weird.
He was weird, and he's talking shit.
Well, yeah,
he hates her dad. Weird. Listen, if you hate somebody's daddy, you're guilty.
Of murder?
That's it. You're guilty. It doesn't matter. It's 1910 in Mississippi. You're guilty.
Okay, I understand that logic, but not actual logic.
It makes perfect sense to me. You're just guilty.
You're weird and you don't like her daddy. You got to.
And you like Janie.
And you
don't
had
like her
those
daddy.
shoes.
That's right. He probably thought that her daddy was getting in his way.
Well, I'm sure he was.
Yeah. So that
because he was weird.
Yeah. So let's just kill Janie. You know, I mean, this
not
guy,
not the dad.
not the dad.
Janie.
Let's kill Janie.
But Janie found her another man. So he's like, wait a minute.
We're taking Janie out.
We're not going to take out the men. We're going to take out her because
Yes.
she's an easier target.
Yeah. She was, back then, and now women, we have the power to hold ourselves accountable and
She
to
wasn't
be strong.
expecting it.
But back then, women weren't expected to be that way. They were more submissive.
1910 in a small town, she never in a million years thought someone was going to do that to
she
her.
probably never
So
knew
she's
murder
just walking
existed.
through town, saying hi to everyone,
Mm-hmm.
out for
There's
a
old
stroll.
weird Swinton. He's sweet on me.
Yeah. Don't worry about him.
He's not going to hurt me.
Yeah. And
boom.
now we're more aware of those things.
Correct.
1910, you're not aware of that.
No, not at all, especially in a small town when you know everybody. So there was a motion for a new trial that was made and then denied. An appeal was immediately started for the state Supreme Court. Meanwhile, Swinton was taken to jail in Jackson, Mississippi for safekeeping. With his appeal before the court, his execution was on hold, and he made friends among both jailers and fellow prisoners.
I'm sure he did.
Oh, yeah. I think from what I've read, again, I don't know the guy. I'm just speaking. This guy had charisma, and we just did a case that will actually drop before this one, and this guy was full of charisma and full of himself, and this is kind of how I picture old Swinton over here. He's just full of himself.
Is there a picture of this guy?
No. We barely could get a picture of Janie.
Well, I'm just...
I want to know if he was cute.
I have it in my head.
Was he cute?
No.
Yes, he was.
No, he wasn't. He thought he was cute.
Mm-hmm.
He was one of those guys that was not cute, but he thought he was, and he flaunted it like he was.
He's like,
everybody wants me, and everybody's like, I don't know about that.
This dude's a little weird.
Well,
yeah.
That's the picture I have in my head. I apologize. That's just...
I picture him to be really tall and slender and maybe a little bow-legged. Lanky. Yeah.
Kind of goofy.
Kind of goofy. Probably has a little curly, blondish, brown.
Yes, he's blonde. Right? I know he's blonde.
Yeah, he's blonde. Yeah, that's how I picture him. And he's, grinning from ear to ear. He's a ladies' man. That's how I picture him.
Or he thinks he's a ladies' man.
He thinks he's a ladies' man.
Yeah, let's not be calling him an actual ladies' man.
Oh, my goodness. So news reports from the Jackson Daily News showed that many who came into contact with him soon believed in his claim of innocence. So he was, not only was he charming, but he was a manipulator. So
well, and we don't know for a fact that he did this, correct?
No.
There's not a whole lot of evidence. There's no blood. We don't talk to anyone. He's got the same shoes as half the 3/4 of the people in town.
If they have shoes.
Because
back then they might not even have shoes.
That's true. But they all had the same pair, right?
Yeah.
And and we're talking, it was probably muddy, so it could have slipped. We're not talking exact science here, guys.
Yeah. They tried.
Sure. We'll say they tried.
They tried. But I think...
Good job, guys.
I think the most important thing here is there was nobody else that could have done it.
And honestly, I kind of believe that he did.
Yeah.
He put himself way out there in the front of this to begin, hey, those dogs are going to come for me. Because I was in the woods.
Which is a good place to be unless someone comes up dead. Then you don't want to be out in the woods and someone be found dead. That could get you in trouble. Like old Swinton here. Well, witnesses.
Yeah, but I bet everyone else was out swimming and in the woods, and nobody said, "Oh no, the dogs are coming for me."
No. Well, no. Anybody with
everybody's going to think it was
not
me.
Going to say that. I would never. I definitely would not even speak that.
Well, that's not something I would even think.
No.
I'd be like, "Oh my gosh, are you serious?" Not, "Oh no, I was in those woods.
The dogs
They're all
are
going to
come
find
get
me. Everyone was in those woods looking for this girl. I mean,
Oh, he was a little self-conscious. That's okay. Well,
if that's what you want to call it.
Witnesses indicated that Swinton thought 2 other people actually committed the crime and that they were possibly involved as witnesses. On April 24th, 1911, the Supreme Court of Mississippi reversed and remanded the verdict against Swinton and indicated that it had its doubts about his guilt. The grounds for reversal were based on an instruction given to the jury concerning the use and validity of the circumstantial evidence. Taken into account the time served and the court's ruling, Swinton was eligible for bail, which kind of throws me off. How is he eligible for bail? But anyway, in May 1911, he was released on a $10,000 bond. Reportedly, he returned home, at least for a while, to the Rural Hill area. A change of venue was granted for Swinton's next trial. It would be held in the city of Winona and was set for October 1911. The trial was indefinitely continued due to non-appearance of several witnesses, including Swinton's sister, who was ill. Soon, 2 additional unsolved murders, a possible alternative suspect, and bribery charges created doubt, distrust, and only widened the breach between those convicted of Swinton's guilt and his own supporters. Between the trials, a man by the name of Ben Walker appeared. His qualifications as an investigator, exactly where he was from, and how he became involved in the Janie Sharp murder case were very unclear. He had a short role in the mysterious tragedy. The weekly commercial appeal showed that Ben Walker testified in the first trial. If true, he claimed to be from Cleveland, Mississippi, and was instructed by the governor to make inquiries into the crime. The newspaper indicated that his testimony was of little consequence and that he had left a poor impression on the court. Most accounts say that Walker was actually hired by the Parmenter family. He may have misrepresented himself under oath about his official status, or he was later hired by the family in a non-official capacity. And you would think that if he lied about who he was, that would actually strike everything out that went for Swinton at this time.
Yeah, but you're talking about 1910. 1911.
Yeah, so you would think they would have done more investigation on who this man was, who hired him. Did the governor, all you got to do is make a phone call to the governor. Hey, did you send this guy down here?
This could be why it's a little different now.
Yeah, it's different now, but that could have thrown everything. That would have went against Swinton, and that would have thrown everything out for his appeal, and he just went ahead and been put on death row.
Right.
But unfortunately, that didn't get followed through, and it kind of got left in the dust. A little over a year later, after the first trial in November 1911, Detective Ben Walker created a stir when he returned from Greenville, Texas, with Thomas McElroy and his family. Walker had arrested McElroy for the murder of Janie Sharp. Thomas McElroy was a previous resident of Rural Hill and son-in-law to Cyrus Ray, the uncle and neighbor of Janie and her fiancé. He and his family moved to Texas in September 1910 after Janie's murder. He had never been looked upon as a suspect until this time, and his arrest was met with a lot of skepticism. The preliminary hearing was delayed for a few days as the second suspect, Hewlett Ray, was arrested upon an affidavit of Elbert Vowell. When the hearing took place in late November, the county attorney, J.B. Gully, asked that all charges be dropped and stated that there was no evidence that these 2 men were involved in Janie Sharp's murder. They were released, and almost immediately Ben Walker was arrested and charged with attempting to bribe witnesses. As a result of the charges, Walker's reputation was further damaged and increased animosity towards him and his actions. There are no records to indicate if the bribery charges were pursued or dropped. Walker stayed in the area, and it was thought that he kept on working the case, although he may have done other things as well. He stayed in the home of Elbert Vowell, and on the evening of March 21st, Walker was reading by his lamplight in the home when a shotgun blast came through the window and struck him in the head. He died immediately. Val got a weapon and exchanged fire with 2 men leaving the house on horseback. No one else was hurt, and no suspects were ever named. Detective Ben Walker was buried in the Wood, or Smallwood Cemetery. The second trial for Swinton was set for early August 1912. Due to the publicity and threats that were aroused by the first trial. The setting would be in Winona, Mississippi, about 45 miles northwest of Louisville. While the defense prepared their case, Swinton's brother Walter had become very involved, and some said that he had information gathered by Ben Walker that was material for the defense. On Friday, August 12, 1912, Walter Perimeter joined his brother Swinton at the home of Eugene Shoemaker in the town of Euphoria. Apparently, Shoemaker was a brother-in-law to the Perimeters. The brothers meant to leave Euphoria the next day and arrived at Winona, where the trial was to begin the following Monday. Swinton went to bed around 9 p.m. A little while later, Walter took the bucket outside to the back porch for some water. As he was drawing the water, he was hit with a gunshot blast to the head, neck, and chest. He fell off the porch and quickly died. The only witness was a young man who saw a single person running across a vacant lot away from the house just moments after the shot was fired. The next day, bloodhounds were brought in and picked up a trail that led south around a cotton house at the local gin and further south into the Big Black Swamp. The trail was lost in the hills south of town. The following day, a boy stumbled upon a shotgun hidden in the cotton house, a shotgun with one spent shell and several others loaded with buckshot. Walter was not yet 31 and left behind a wife and 3 kids. His remains were returned to Winston County, and he was buried in the Masonic Cemetery in Louisville. No one was ever charged for his death. Some wondered that in the darkness, Walter was mistaken for Swinton, while others claimed that Walter was actually the target because of the information he might disclose at the upcoming trial. Now, there were 2 more unsolved murders of people involved in this case. And in more than 2 years since Janie's death, not only had Detective Ben Walker been murdered just 3 days before the start of the second trial, the brother of Swinton, Walter Perimeter, had also been killed by an unknown assailant. On August 12, 1912, a crowd packed into the courtroom in Winona, Mississippi for one of the most notorious legal battles in Mississippi history. People, men and women, came from all over to sit or stand in the stifling hot courtroom. Law enforcement was out and everyone entering was searched. The jury selection took 2 days and jurors were selected from a pool of 100. By 8:30 a.m. on August 24th, 12 days later, the jury was ready to deliver the verdict. They filed back into the courtroom and the judge asked if they had reached a verdict. The jury foreman replied, "Yes, sir, we have." The verdict was passed to the clerk as dead silence rang before the clerk read, "We, the jury, find the defendant not guilty." There was no outburst in the courtroom. The defendant was speechless as the judge thanked everyone. As court adjourned, the Perimeter family rose and rushed to the jury to shake the hands and thank them. Swinton's father spoke, "Thank God, my poor boy is free. He never killed that girl." In the presence of his family, Swinton also thanked the jury. The Sharp family reacted quite differently. Will Sharp said, "It's a crying shame that such a result could have been reached. Nobody in the world but Perimeter killed my daughter, and if they were going to bring in another man charged with this crime, I'd say nobody but Swinton Perimeter murdered her." Lee Sharp warned about the danger of turning such a heartless brute loose in any community. Swinton Perimeter was a free man. Due to the emotion of the Sharp family, he was guarded throughout that day until he left Winona that evening. His destination was closely guarded. All that was disclosed was he is headed to some point unknown. So that was it. Swinton, he goes to trial 12 days later. They find him not guilty. And he just ended up leaving Winston, basically. I think from a little bit I read, he did marry someone and stayed married for a little while.
Of course.
I couldn't find if he had any, crimes that he committed after this. There was no record of anything like that I could find. But, it's still a mystery to this day. No proof of anything. What do you think?
I think Swinton's a little suspicious.
Yeah.
Who else could it have been, honestly?
Unless it was one of the other guys that he was swimming with. But let's be honest, none of those had any reason to do it. They weren't stuck on Janie or interested in Janie. Now,
apparently their shoes didn't match.
They might. Well,
but did they even it's not like they went through town checking people's shoes.
No, I don't even think they talked to everyone. They used the hounds.
Which
the hound dogs.
I mean, I think he put himself, if he had kept his mouth shut.
I think his guilt spoke for himself.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's what I think. I fully believe that.
Yeah, and truly,
no one's going to do that if they're innocent. They're not even going to think about putting themselves in the forefront.
Exactly. They're not even going to start making excuses before they need one.
Like,
yeah.
Why would they have gone to him?
Exactly. And, you know, I believe that parents can have a sixth sense when it comes to their children. And Will, Janie's father, was convinced to the day he died.
Well, there had to be a feeling, and he seemed kind of, I mean, he's already proven that he's not the most trustworthy kind of guy.
No, he already didn't like him. And listen, we all know if our kids have a bad friend or a bad dating partner, we already know that, right? So he already knew there was something not right about this guy. And
well, it sounds like to me the entire town did, right?
The entire town. Yeah, pretty much the entire town. That's why they moved him out of the city limits.
He's not the only one. He was the only one that put himself
out there
and said, oh no, they're going to come after me.
Yeah, he was already building a defense.
Everyone else is out looking for her, and he's like, wait,
Well, and he was not only that, trying to deter people from looking in the area that her body was located. And that's another thing.
Which
he kept saying, I've already looked there. Did you? You already looked there, or did you put her there?
He could have just, I don't know. He could have just, okay, go find it. What have you got against me?
Right.
He put himself out there.
Well, I think he did it, y'all. I think he did it.
I fully believe he did it. We can't say 100%, but I fully believe that
I think he did it.
I don't see anyone else.
And I think that Janie never was served justice, ever.
No.
I think that unfortunately her family and Janie was never served justice.
For a brutal killing.
Brutal killing. Can you imagine?
It's horrible.
Yeah. And her
she
brother.
Had wonderful plans. She could have started a family.
Yeah. Yeah, she was so young, and her poor brother had to, find her and live with that, and the father had to live with it. He brought her back home. Back then, they would have funerals in the home, and the dead would lay in wake at the home until they were buried. So they had to go. It was traumatic. So anyway, I think Swinton did it. I do. I truly believe that, and I fully believe justice for Janie Sharp, but unfortunately that'll never happen. It's too far gone. So, but anyway, guys, we're going to shut it down for now. We will be bringing you some more shows weekly, as we always do. But until then, most importantly, see the good and stay imperfectly perfect.
Thanks, guys.
You.
Bye.
Bye.